racing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Monday Nights here at Evolution Sim Racing, ahead of the 9th and penultimate round of the GT4 TCR multi-class season. Following on from that 12-hour special event over the weekend, tonight is the last opportunity for these drivers to utilise that drop round if it's required. Looking ahead to Brands Hatch next week, and we've saved one hell of a circuit for that as the drivers arrive to tackle the aggressive elevation around the 23 corners here at Bathurst. A circuit, actually this particular series is yet to visit, and it's a circuit that ESR hasn't arrived to in quite some time, so we look forward to what is on offer tonight. As always, you join myself, Joseph Glass, and Mr. Dara Thacker in the commentary booth to take you through the action tonight as we look to crown potentially the first of 5 champions. And Dara, I'm not sure I could think of a more rewarding circuit for some of these guys to nail during the 2 races tonight, and one of them, or maybe multiple, might get one hand on their respective titles going in to that final round this time next week.
Yeah, and so a lot of these drivers will have had a little bit of practice over the weekend, albeit in the GT3, not in the GT4, but some of those skills will be transferable. It is Bathurst season, isn't it, really, as we get towards the end of the season. You're right about championships maybe coming to a close. I think a couple of them will take quite a lot to be won tonight. Others really just need to keep points the same. William Humphrey, we'll see the standings in a minute, doesn't have to do a great deal to get himself the title tonight. He's the closest, but he's still got to do some work.
Absolutely right then. So, before we head over to trackside, let's take a look at the formalities as always. First, with a quick mention of the sponsors. As always, can't go without these guys. Kame, the GP2 Group, and Keenan Eco Energy. So again, thank you to those guys. And as you rightly said there, Dara, it's William Humphrey who leads the way still, of course, as you might expect, 149 points clear of Ben Smith. Had his well, I'm not sure if it's his worst result, but he had, let's say, the worst result that he's had in one hell of a long time, all the way since the second round of the championship. So that win streak came to the end for Humphrey, but of course it wouldn't be right for him not to get at least one win in that one. He is nearly said and done, as Dara just said. A few points scored tonight will take him over that threshold, of course. No drop round applied next week, and I think it's just 100 points on offer next week. I'll double check that one before we get going, but Ben Smith has a lot of work to do tonight, and he has to hope that it doesn't go in any sort of favour for William Humphrey. Of course, we have a 15-minute sprint race to define the grid for race 2, so anything could happen in that short and snappy one. Yannis Aubert still inside the top 3, pretty, well, not that comfortable, but he'll back himself, I'm sure, to stay ahead of the Axis Sim Sports Porsche of Thomas Pugh, who's in a slightly less fortunate position, just 2 points ahead of Marius Hidma. However, for Marius, he will start toward the back of the grid during that first sprint race, having to serve a qualifying ban for that accumulation of license points. He's with us in the chat, actually, at the moment. So, good luck to you, Marius, when you head out on track for the start of the race, and that's good news for the likes of Thomas Pugh. Adam Atherton, about as far away as anybody from the next driver in this championship, so he just has to try and keep it toward the front of the grid and not drop out to the next couple of drivers. Jeremy Ulemans, Joe Sparrow, Jeff Hibbert and Stephen Donnelly, the top 10. Those positions could quite easily change over the next 2 meetings. Lawrence and Alden will be hopeful to get himself inside the top 10 just for some sort of bragging rights to finish in a pretty strong position. And then it's Mitchell Costas, the Sweat Sim Racing driver on 264 points. He's also 111 points off the back of the Dutchman, something that I doubt will be overcome in the next 2 race meetings.
Going to be tricky. You were right in saying that it is going to be only 100 points won next week, so it means that a 101 point gap after tonight would be enough to win a title, and I think we may struggle to see that open up in the GT4 AM category, because Robin Earl Brown has a narrow 15 point advantage over Liam Fraser, who really has risen through the field, claiming 4 wins in the last 6 races on a very, very impressive run. He is pushing Robin Earl Brown all the way to try and claim this title. Niels Keuler still involved as well, 21 points back in P3. By far, this GT4 AM category, the closest leading battle that we've got in all 4 classes at the moment. Luke Bailey is a long way back, 177 points away from P3's Niels Keuler. It's going to take a lot for him to be able to get towards the top 3 and what would be a trophy-winning position. Edward Groves in 5th and just ahead of a tight little battle of John LeBrook and Rob Gregg. Dean Sheets being Class Velen tied on 487 points. We'll see who can gain the upper edge tonight. Daniel Poole rounds out the top 10. It'll be Matt Stace and Charlie Stottard in the top 12. We'll see if either of those two can get towards the top 10 tonight.
Yeah, it really is an intriguing battle between those 3 at the front of the AM class. Of course, qualifying here so important, not only with that format but also the nature of this circuit. Only a handful of overtaking opportunities around this part, and of course getting caught up in that mountain section can really spell the end to your night. So really intriguing between Noel Brown, Fraser and Niels Keuler to see who will go into the final round. Favourite, of course. Over in the TCRs, it's more of the same, really. Slightly worse off, but still these couple of drivers in contention. McKinley leading the way still over Mackenzie, and those two have had a pretty memorable season between them, of course. Spent the second half of the season on the podium in every race so far for Mr. McKenzie. 1 missing for the championship leader. Jaden Scotton and Jay Corley, and as well as Anthony Hilton, really, have crossed the line side by side with one another for the last few races. They have really, really gone toe-to-toe over the last couple of weeks. Of course, the 3 team shelter drivers surrounding that lone flatline green machine at the front of the standings. Those 5 ahead of James Howarth leading the way in the DXT Motorsports Honda. It'll be Scott Malcolm inside the top 7, with Max Nevenchani a little far away from that position at the moment. Still lots on offer to get into the top 5, however. Kevin Marshall says next up in that Audi, I think, is that the lead? No, it's not. I've got Anthony Hilton in that lead Audi. Keith Calhoun will round out the top 10. Alec Iyenga, who's had a pretty sparse season so far, is with us again tonight. Let's see. Keith hasn't been with us for quite some time, so Alec slowly chipping away at his chance to get inside the top 10. Does actually stand that chance. Branko Kubovic hasn't been with us for most of the championship, but still sits inside the top 12.
And finally, we'll have a quick look at the TCR AM standings that are currently being led by a decent enough margin by Hussein Saraka. That's the number 8 Kame GP2 driver, 9 wins on the season, including 3 triple win evenings in all 3 of the 20-minute evenings. 3 lots of races. One of those, Road America Coast from Mugello. He's won all 9 races that have been 20 minutes long in this class. That may not bode well for him tonight, but he's got a nice margin to fall back into. Gordon Hales is the one chasing him down. He got 3 P2s last week. 3 P3s went to Martin Kenyon, who is P3 in the championship and quite a ways down. In terms of the margin, it'll be Rob Smith and it'll be Andrew Fellows in 4th and 5th, trying to get themselves towards what could be a trophy by the end of next week. Danny Weir and Dean Sargent, 6th and 7th, a big gap between those two, 166 points it is between Weir and Sargent. Rubino, Haddington and Mark Parkhurst are inside the top 10. Two-time race winner Ashley Brooks is in 11th. He's only been here for 2 race weekends, though, which is why he's down in P11. And it'll be David Randalls, who rounds at the top 12. He's not been here for some time, but there's not many TCR drivers, and that's why he's still in the top 12.
It is quite an interesting one there for Mr. Brooks. You know, what could have been if he had a little bit more time to compete in this championship. As you say, rocked up and got himself some wins and then got straight back out of it. But, you know, he's there. That's all good. Meanwhile, though, over in the Teams Championship, it is still in the lead for Team Shelter, who've been there, I believe, at the top of the tree for quite some time. There's been a change of position in P2. The GlassTech DXT machine team dropping into P3, but only 1 point behind the Camry GP2 team of Noel Brown, John Ludbrook, and Sarah Cadesla coming into this one. Yanis Aubert, William Humphrey, and Francois Brandet will have to be on top form to try and get past that team. Of course, a different dynamic having Sarah Cadesla in the mix there. Of course, a full TCR team leading the way, a full GT4 team in the top 3, and then a little mixture there between GT4 and TCR, which will bode well, of course, with Noel Brown and Sarah Cadesla doing very well at the front of their respective championships, bringing in more points than what is actually possible for some of these other guys in their respective classes. Axis Simsports Blue next up, again still within a good chance of getting their hands on a trophy, but they need a good result now or never, quite frankly. The Moonshiners have been there or thereabouts. Need a bit more luck though. The gap's starting to increase. It's becoming a little bit more difficult for those guys to mount any sort of challenge on the top 3. They should really be looking in their rearview mirror at the two-man army of the Lumen Motorsport drivers, Andrew McKinley and Scott Malcolm, who are their nearest competition. After that, it's DXT staying just ahead of the two flatline teams in the 13,000 point range, and then another little drop off outside the top 10, sorry, just inside the top 10 to the Lumen Pulse drivers then. So that will round us off nicely just as we come to the end of our qualifying, to the end of our practice session, and we'll have a handful of drivers making their way around the circuit now to set off on what will be their first of 3 qualifying laps around Bathurst tonight. And as we said already, Dara, it's about as important a qualifying session around this place, especially with that very, very short 15-minute race, which will, of course, define the grid for where the bulk of the points will be scored.
Yeah, because, you know, not being able to get into any kind of reverse grid in the first 15 minutes means that you're just going to have to fight your way through in 2 stages if you have a bad qualifying session. The GT4s will know that. TCRs maybe having a little bit more of an easy time, knowing that they'll probably be near the back anywhere, and if they have a bad qualifying, they'll just start towards the back of their order. The GT4s have to fight their way through the TCRs, which is going to be difficult enough. Getting stuck behind at the mountain, they should be able to overtake a few of them down the back straight towards the chase. And up towards the final couple of corners, but it's just not where you really want to be. So these first laps are going to be critical, but getting a decent lap time on the board probably more important here than it has been all season long.
Absolutely right. Pretty, well, I mean, it's not impossible to get a track limits violation around here, but it is very possible to get some pretty terminal damage, especially coming over this little kink to the left. Pretty tricky to get the tucked in through turns 8 and 9, of course, before you reach the skyline dip all the way down from turn 11 to turn 18. One of the trickiest sequences of corners, I think you could argue, anywhere at all. Slightly slower pace, of course, especially on the outlap, but I'm sure we'll see some of those lead GT4 drivers absolutely sending it over the crest at skyline. Through the dipper then for Mr. Parkhurst in his Audi before we reach turn 18 down at Forest Elbow. Yep, and there it is. Track limits on the gravel around any other circuit. But here, that's contact with the barrier, and not out of qualifying, but back to the pit lane for the time being for Mr. Parkhurst.
Yeah, not too much longer for him to get a lap time in, of course. Still a little bit of time. How much time do we have, John? Not too sure.
8:50, Dara. Can you see?
8:50. Okay, so we've got... No, I can't. I don't know why. That'll just be me. But I can't see the tower. But yeah, that could be my problem. But we will have to wait and see how these guys can adapt, because it's not a long qualifying session at all. Very long lap here. We're looking at well over 2. Well, you know, a little bit over 2 minutes per lap. It's going to be a 7 lap race to kick us off this evening. So times so critical. And you mentioned coming over skyline and going down through the dipper and through the S. It's such a tricky part of the racetrack, but you really do have to have full commitment through there, otherwise you could find yourself losing 10th after 10th.
Absolutely right then. Speaking of which, we've just jumped from one Lumen driver over to the other. Here is the TCR Pro Championship leader, Andrew McKinley. He's heading around now on what is his first lap. Gets it out, passed through Forest Elbow nicely, just about extending the track about as far as you can really push it there. And now he's got such a long run down the bank all the way through the Conrad Straight down toward the chase. Pretty tricky. Flat out right-hand corner before you get on the stoppers. Pretty easy to find yourself taking a little trip to the beach over the gravel trap at the exit of turn 21. running through 22. We're going to start getting the first lap times on the board. Anna Matherton about to cross over the start-finish line. William Humphrey won't be far behind him. Mitchell Costas as well. A handful of drivers will start punching in lap times. They're going to be somewhere in the region of the 2:15s, the 2:20s for the TCRs, perhaps. There it is. Yannis Aubert taking provisional pole position at 2:13.6. Thomas Pugh, his rival, getting a time on the board within half a second. However, William Humphrey crosses the line and goes within half a tenth.
Yeah, important for William Humphrey to get the lap times on the board for him, as we will follow up towards turn 2 on board one of the Glass Tech cars. Difficult really to spend all this time going, flat out, foot to the floor, and then pick your braking point at a tricky corner, of course, uphill, turning right. You don't want to brake too heavily. You want to keep momentum up. But, of course, with the elevation change, the car's going to naturally slow down, just due to gravity. So you can use all of those conditions to help you rotate the car through some of these corners up towards the cutting. You can see how tight the lines are, how neat it really is through some of these corners, but still you ride up towards the top of the hill, and you have to really thread a needle through some of these corners, because by the time you get up towards McPhillamy Park, just here at turn 10, you're going to be trying not to hit the wall on the outside line. It's such a tricky circuit to nail, but that's really what the drivers have to do. And with championship conditions as they are, the penultimate round of the season, they don't really have much room to not really commit here.
And sorry everyone, I just want to confirm, Dara, can you see the tower or not?
I cannot see the tower.
You can't see the tower. I must have shared the application rather than the screen, so bear with me everybody, and I will quickly correct that one. But yeah, you're right. We're seeing Humphrey pushing the limits here, getting so close to the wall, which is of course exactly what you have to do to maximise the lap time around here. You can't really afford to leave too much out there, of course. It's risk reward. Could end your session, you could end your qualifying, could end the race prematurely, but that's really how you gain. Should be all good now, Dara. Give me the green light and then we'll crack on.
Yes, it is.
All good. Good stuff. So Humphrey then has a little bit of time to overcome before he can get past his teammate leading the sharp end of the stick at the moment. I'm sure he'll be able to find half a tenth before the conclusion of this session. 5 minutes to go then. Liam Fraser leading the way in the front of the M class, which is not what Noel Brown would want to see. At the moment, he's P3 overall. Noel Brown is P7 overall. So just a handful of cars in that Pro Division separating these guys in their little class championship battle. But yeah, top 3 for the 3 of them. It'll be pretty feisty, I think, considering the lap times are more or less the same. And I'm sure some positions will change before we get to that point. Noel Brown, actually, has he finished? No, he did only set 2 lap times, but he's come back into the pit lane on the exit of the first corner. I wonder, maybe he picked up a little bit of an invalidation there, and that might be all that Noel Brown's got in the tank for this session.
Yeah, may have to settle with starting in P3, which wouldn't be ideal, especially behind Liam Fraser. It's worth remembering that this is the last week that drivers can drop, or drivers can then take their drop round. So with that in mind, Robin O'Brien has a drop round of 27 points. Niels Kula has a drop round of 28 points. Liam Fraser has a drop round of 81 points. So if he needs to, he has a lot to fall back into, and he could have an absolutely awful night. But if Robin O'Brien has a similarly bad night, Liam Fraser is going to suddenly jump into a decently sized championship lead. So definitely a good chance for Liam Fraser here, especially if he starts on pole, to maybe take the lead in the championship for the first time this season, going into the final event of the year, or final event of the season, I should say. Yeah,
sometimes when you've got, not that he's got nothing to lose, of course, you'll still want to be in the top 3, you'll still fancy a trophy, but when there's a championship on the line, sometimes if you're the one doing the chasing, you feel like you do have nothing to lose, and it might be a little bit of pressure on Noel Brown now not to make any mistakes. Of course, he's had such a dominant championship on a Thursday night in the GT3 class that, maybe he's taken one eye off of this one ever so slightly, and now pressure's on around such a tricky circuit. So, potentially, with the gaps pretty close at the top of that championship, it might bode well for the guys in P2 and P3. Gloves are off, got to send it, and you never know, it might work with a little bit of pressure on the championship leader. While we've been away, though, William Humphrey, his championship leader, has put an absolute stonking lap in. He's gone nearly half a second quicker. He's just improved once again by a fraction of a few thousandths of a second there to extend to 2 1,000ths shy of his teammate Yannis Aubert, just half a second now. I say just, it's a big margin. And nearly, well, over a second outside the top 4. Adam Atherton doing what he needs to do, actually, if he fancies getting inside the top 5 at the moment. Adam's been a bit of a dark horse the last couple of races in that Mercedes, putting it in between those Porsches at the front of the grid.
It'd be really interesting to see that he's been able to get towards the front. We'll have to see if he can continue that good form throughout the rest of the evening. Edward Grobe jumped it up into P11. What can Gordon Hales do? Of course, competitive in that TCR AM category, not going to improve there. Den Ouden's just jumped up into P18. That's important for him to get himself towards the back of the group of GT4s. It's also interesting to note that there isn't the biggest of gaps between the back of the GT4s and the front of the TCRs. It's only about 6/10 between John Ludbrook and Andrew McKinley at the moment, which isn't a lot of time, isn't a lot of wiggle room for some of those guys to fall back into, so they're going to have to be very, very careful. But a couple of GT4s would still like to improve, I'm sure, and to get themselves away from some of those TCRs. But for the time being, I believe that everybody who's setting a qualifying that time in the GT4s is ahead of the TCRs, and that's going to be critical for them.
Yeah, of course, we put out a little message in the channel earlier just to say, you know, the gaps that we saw last week around Mugello were a little bit too big. So hopefully the guys at the front of the TCR grid at the moment, Mr. McKinley, does sort of adhere to that one and keeps us nicely in order. What will be interesting is to see the difference not only in the classes but within the categories as well, is to see how aggressive people are when they send it over Skyline. Let's listen on board with Lawrence Den Ouden as he goes over the crest. Just lifting and not exactly maximising the entry there. I mean, it's such a tricky corner to get right. And he just understeers there over to the right-hand side. That will upset his run ever so slightly. But yeah, the reason I say that, Dara, it took me a good few stints in the endurance race on Saturday before I started really pushing the limit over there. I was kind of braking a little bit earlier than I needed to, and by the end of the session I was almost, you know, on the throttle as you go over the crest and then straight on the brakes in a downhill sense rather than doing it before you reach the crest. So I wonder if we'll see, you know, it's quite a lot of time you can find there if you can really commit over the crest and carry your speed, sort of turn the next 3 or 4 corners into one long braking zone. That's really where you can find, I was finding, the best part of a second by just changing that one little thing at the top of the hill. So maybe that's where these gaps are coming from between the drivers toward the front.
Yeah, and it doesn't take a lot, does it, really, to lose or gain a great deal here at Bathurst. Like, I mean, we were talking about how important it is to thread a needle at some of the points in the circuit. You know, you can just gain so much time just from having a little bit more confidence and being able to, you know, trust your right foot, really, and get yourself through the likes of Skyline, down through the S's, with a little bit more pace momentum, and that'll carry you all the way down the hill. So even if it's a 2/10 gain at the top of the hill, it may become a 5/10 gain by the time you get to Forest Elbow.
Exactly right. Well, this will be very intriguing, actually. I'm looking forward to this one, particularly after knowing that some of these guys will have competed over the weekend, so they'll be right on form, of course, not in these machines, but yeah, they'll definitely be up to scratch. One man who is still up to scratch is Mr. William Humphrey, the 3.9H, setting a pole time of a 2-minute 12.774. He will start ahead of Yannis Aubert by just shy of half a second. So if William can get himself away at the start, of course, as we've said, with that buffer of his teammate in behind, it could bode well for the rest of his night, of course, avoiding the issues further down the pack in the mid-pack. Adam Atherton and Thomas Pugh will share the second row of the grid before we get that battle in the GT4 AM class. Advantage Fraser for the time being. Nils Culler right in behind him. As they cross the line, it'll be Ben Smith, who we know has a lot of pace and a lot of good consistency, and it's he who Mr. Noel Brown has to try and get past in order to put some pressure on his championship rivals. Klaas Vellen and Jeff Hibbard will share the fifth row of the grid, rounding out the top 10 ahead of Edward Grobe and Mitchell Costas. Stephen Donnelly and Luke Bailey will start ahead of Dean Sheesby inside our top 15, with Jeremy Ulemans and Matt Stace ahead of Charlie Stothard, Daniel Poole and Joe Spara inside the top 20. Lawrence Den Ouden, Rob Gregg and John Ludbrook. Andrew McKinley, a little bit of confusion there in the background between a few of those drivers. Andrew McKinley will take pole position in the GT4 Pro Class, TCR Pro Class, should I say, ahead of Logan McKinsey and Jaden Scotton. Alec Iyenga and Gordon Hales there on pole in the TCR AM division, ahead of Jay Coley, Anthony Hilton, Scott Malcolm, and Kevin Marshall. James Howarth in P33, Steve Rubino in P34, Max Nevincharny, Danny Weir, Mark Parker. So saying Sarika Desler out of sorts there a little bit by Sarika Desler down the order. Dean Sargent and Martin Kenyon in P40. And again, out of sorts from Kenyon to be so far down his championship. And then it is the last few rows of Andrew Fellows before we reach the two men who did not set a qualifying time. It's Marius Sidmer, of course, serving that qualifying ban, and Jason Haddington, who was unable to set a lap time. We'll start at the back of the grid, and we're already underway here. Almost perfectly timed, but it did catch me off guard a little bit as the drivers head now down into turn one. There's already contact somewhere there. 2 by 2, they all flow through the opening corner, and the TCRs have done well to maintain that gap as they all come through the first corner. Then it looks as though they've all done very well toward the front of the field. Last few drivers heading through now. It's all remained the same inside the top 4. And Robin Noel Brown has got himself past Liam Fraser, who's got a little bit of a problem because he's dropping down the order ever so slightly now.
Yeah, it's important to start well, and William Humphrey's done that. Hibner, of course, the only GT4 in and amongst the TCRs, could be happy that he's not a million miles away in terms of pace off the rest of the field. Noel Brown and Kula fighting it out. You can just about see that in the foreground, side by side, as they run their way through the cutting. Kula's just about going to get that one done, and through comes one of the pro drivers. That is, I'm not too sure who that is, coming through, but he's going to split Niels Kula and Robin Noel Brown for the time being. The Latvian just about getting himself in front. It is Ben Smith, of course, needs to get towards the front for the championship. If he's not careful, the championship could be over by tonight, and being P5 at the moment, not going to help him out at all.
Yeah, very aggressive move there. Around the outside goes Ben Smith, and that is what happens, sadly, and he's come right back across the circuit. That could cause absolute chaos further down the order. People are really going to have to start checking up here, and it looks as though it's cleared. He got himself nicely reset back to the pit lane. Sadly, he didn't really have a choice. Well, okay, he did have a choice not to send it on colour. He did up the inside at turn 10, of course, but then when you try and... Oh, there's been another huge incident here. Oh, dear me. It's a car park at the bottom of the hill. That is 2 of the TCRs. That's Jay Coley, I think, around with one of the flatlines. Is that Jaden's? Yes, it's Jay Scotton and Jay Coley who've got themselves tangled up, and all the rest of the TCR cars have to slowly navigate their way through there.
Yeah, difficult. I mean, it would have been ideal if a couple of those could have towed back to pit lane. Of course, not ideal for them, but it's blocking the track isn't ideal for them. They're always going to be at the back of the field, but they are going to be right towards the rear. I've just had another quick look at the Niels Kula incident with Ben Smith, and it almost looks like Niels Kula sends it back on Ben Smith. Ben Smith is, you know, almost a full car length ahead of Niels Kula into the corner. Kula sends it up the inside and misses the apex and causes the contact. So it's not looking ideal from his point of view. And I think that we're going to be seeing Ben Smith feeling somewhat aggrieved by that, as we see McKinley and McKinsey both in the pit lane.
Yeah, I was just about to say, crazy for the championship leaders to both come into the pit lane, followed by another Lumen machine there in the background. So a busy pit lane. Half of what we expected, really. Sarika Desler still out there on the circuit. He'll be hopeful of that himself. Wow, look at this. Marius Hibner already up to P18, gained 24 places in just the opening lap there, a lap and a half. And then Dean Sargent, Danny Weir, 15 and 17. Loads of guys up 15 places or so. Martin Kenyon up from P40 into P26, of course, the beneficiaries of that incident. Anthony Hilton up the inside of Dean Sargent. He leads the way in class. This is exactly what Team Shelter need, of course. Not ideal for the other drivers in their team, but at least one of them has survived that chaos and will score points in the team's championship. That does somewhat hand a bit of an advantage back to the Kama GP2 and the Glasstec DXT teams.
It does. Unfortunate, really, to see so many cars down the order, but it is good for those teams to still be competitive, and for Hibner to be where he is, P18. Getting through the carnage really is absolutely critical. Means that he is going to be right there on the second race start to try and pick up some big points for his aspirations this season. Fraser could do with getting through on Robin Noel Brown and Niels Kula if he can. Of course, he's got those drop points to fall back on, but he won't really want to, especially considering he's up at the moment picking up 40 points for P3. Noel Brown blinking there, having a slight connection issue, but he is still in P2. The issue for him is that it looks like Liam Fraser's a little bit faster at the moment.
My mistake. I thought that Liam was going to go for a move there. Clicked the wrong button, but he hasn't. We haven't missed too much, but he is putting pressure all over the back of that Porsche. All the while, Nils Culler just a few car lengths ahead of them, but he'll fancy it while these two do battle. Noel Brown takes a bit of a defensive stance, forcing Fraser all the way to the inside. Boy, just about gets it through the corner and stays ahead around the outside. Does that Porsche. This battle is going to continue up the hill. 3 Mercedes there in a chain at the moment, blinking by Noel Brown as Fraser attempts to get through. I wonder, as we enter Season 2 of iRacing here in 2025, if that would be a connection flag for Noel Brown, which is, in my mind, a very, very great addition that we'll soon see coming to iRacing. I did want to just take a look at how this all unfolded. It's gone ahead already, so it started further up the road. It's McKinley and Mackenzie who come together. Looking further up the road, there it is. I think that's one of the JSD machines who spins Matt Stace, and then from that point, it's just one big pile-up. I think Daniel Poole might be involved here, yes, with one of the JSDs. No, this is further down the ODS. Such a tricky place. I mean, when you got 40-odd cars steaming down that hill in quick succession, it's bound to go wrong for at least one of them. And when it goes wrong for one, it tends to go wrong for them all.
Yeah, you could just about see there that there was a couple of drivers going through the dipper. One car coming a little bit sharper across than another. Oh my word, that's... Is that Hipman having the issue? I don't think it is. Through they come in towards Skyline. It's the 252. That is Dean Sheesby who hit the wall through McPhillamy Park. You don't really want to be sending it on the outside here, Joe. Can work out on the opening up. And you can see there the line that has just been taken by Dean Sheesby. Very tight to the inside wall. That wasn't the line that Niels Kula took on the opening lap. He was a good half a car's width away from that wall. And that's kind of why the contact was initiated between himself and Ben Smith. But that illustrates the point perfectly. Here is McKinsey. Somehow, even though he's been down pit lane, he's third. It's incredible, really.
The pair of them. Yeah, the pair of them. I'm just about to say, how has this happened? They've both been in the pit lane, took that fast repair, would have lost about 40 seconds of race time in all of that. I mean, that must have really, really impacted the entire TCR Pro division if these guys are still in the lead, of course. 9 seconds off the back of Anthony Hilton. Team Shelter, Logan McKinsey won't mind that at all, but McKinley has to get his foot down now, of course. 8 minutes to go in this opening round. That will absolutely fly by, but yeah, that really is telling about the damage that was handed out to the TCR Pro class, that both of these guys have spent 40 seconds in the pit lane and are still both challenging for the podium.
Exactly. It shows how good that they've been all season long, really. I mean, yes, I get it that they've also been lucky in terms of everybody else was caught up in the incident. It's Dean Sargent just up in front. I think that has gone around. There was some smoke being kicked up. Dean Sargent's gone down the order, and is that him dropping down? I think it could be. He's dropped behind the likes of Chaos, Narcotis, Kenyon, and Parkhurst, as it will be him in the background there. McKinsey trying to attack McKinley down in towards the final corner. Gets so close between them on the run across the start-finish line once again. There's only going to be 4 more laps in this race. We're over halfway through already.
Yeah, no love lost between these two, of course, going toe-to-toe for this championship. McKinsey knows that he can't win it on his own. He's really got to hope that something happens to McKinley ahead. He is going to look to get this position, of course. He might make it a little bit difficult for the driver. No, he just moved back over to the left-hand side. But yeah, sadly for Logan McKinsey, taking this position doesn't really help him at all. Never mind, he hasn't taken it because the Honda stuck it up the inside. Textbook switchback, though, by the Hyundai as he moves back around the outside and swoops past the championship challenger. This is Logan McKinsey now back into P2, but as I was saying, points good enough for third won't really help the American driver all that much at the moment.
It is worth remembering, of course, that Logan McKinsey has a drop round of 100 points, so even if he does struggle a little bit throughout the rest of the race, taking points away from Andrew McKinley, who's dropping absolutely none, is going to be critical. McKinley wasn't here for the opening round at Zolder, and Logan McKinsey has dropped his race at Zolder, so even though officially Logan McKinsey has scored some 46 points more over the course of the season, Andrew McKinley has... well, he is leading the championship by virtue of the drop round. It's kind of helping him out somewhat. Logan wouldn't mind trying to use some of those drop round points if they start to have a mare in race number 2. There's contact, round goes Sheesby. I'm not too sure how Sheesby's managed to go around there. Spara's going to take the grass to make sure that he doesn't cause any more contact. But I think he just, well, I think he got spooked and didn't want to hit the car in front.
Yeah, is it Lawrence? I think maybe came back across under braking a little bit. Yeah, slight jink. Sheesby, not really much on the Mercedes there. I think Sheesby's maybe just misjudged that one ever so slightly. Spara dives to the outside, takes to the runoff, keeps his car in about as good nick as you can get it. And I was just about to say, did we have a TCR ahead? But I don't think we do. No, we don't. The lead TCR is Anthony Hilton. He is back here. John Ludbrook is under pressure from Rob Gregg as we head up the exit of turn 1 through toward turn 2, and the McLaren gets the better of the Porsche. Into the braking zone we go through Griffin's Bend, and now it's advantage. That McLaren, however, on the rear has seen better days, I think, Dara. We don't quite get a good picture of it here, but it's pretty squished on the backside of that McLaren ahead.
Yeah, I think actually the lead GT4 is actually, sorry, GT4 TCR is actually Danny Weir in the AM class. I believe he's ahead on track of Anthony Hilton. And if Danny was to win this race, he'd be the 7th driver in that TCR AM class to claim a victory so far this season. That is more than any of the other classes. There's only been 4 winners in the GT4 Pros, 4 in the GT4 AMs, and 2 in the TCR Pros. At the moment, Anthony Hilton could make himself the 3rd. To go along with the 4 other podiums he's had this season, that would be a bit of a surprise. But of course, with the carnage that we've seen so far, not too surprising to see that one of the top 2 hasn't managed to make it through scot-free. Iyenga's battling as well as they work their way up towards the top of the mountain. But there's only a couple more laps for these guys to battle it out, and you're not going to make moves over the top of the mountain. Really, there's only 3 or 4 opportunities left for these guys.
Sarah Cadezza here under a lot of pressure from McKinsey, who's got the pace under pressure again from McKinley. Slight front to rear contact there by the 2 drivers that we've already caught in one exchange slightly earlier on. Sarah Cadezza, of course, running the race of his own, currently in P3 in the AM class. He's got the 2 championship leaders in the Pro class right behind him. He won't want to put up too much of a fight. Looks to go around the outside, which he does. Holds on to that position ahead of these 2, and he's not really making it easy for them. He's actually giving McKinley a bit of an opportunity to try and make a pass on McKinsey here. A long run down through towards the chase. Great opportunity to build up some momentum on that Honda, who has the favoured inside line, which will sadly for him become the outside by the time they reach turns 21 and 22. This one is going to go right to the line between 2 drivers who do not want to give anything up. Down the inside goes McKinsey. On the outside sticks McKinley, and they're still side by side, Dara, down toward the final corner.
Yeah, outside line not really favourable at the final turn for the Scotsman. If he's able to stick it around the outside, Logan will back himself on the inside line. They're going to be rubbing, not quite. They're going to be locked side by side again out of turn 1. The difficulty for McKinley is it's another right-hander coming up at turn number 1. I think Logan's going to have this one sorted now with enough overlap to make sure he's ahead. And there he goes, back up into P2. Great little tussle though between those 2. Robin O'Brown is listed as out. Is he just disconnected momentarily? What's happened to him in the 2-2? And we'll have to try and work it out. But there's only 2 more laps to go in this race for McKinley and McKinsey to try and battle this one. Yeah,
I think Noah Brown is still there, but he's blinking heavily, and that's him into the barrier. Avoidance there by the Mercedes in behind him. That's Mitchell Costas up 5 places at the moment inside the top 5 in class, trying to get past that blinking Porsche. I'm wondering if Noah Brown is aware of that. It would be better for Costas to get that moved, and I think he's going to get it done. The closest battle we have on track, these 2 though, going at it again. Look at that, the gap that was built up at the exit of turn 1 has been closed down immediately through the technical section, through Griffin's Bend, through the cutting, and now they rise over the crest through 8, 9 and 10. I think this is going to be about the most entertaining battle that we've got throughout the rest of this session. Only 1.5 minutes to go, but of course this will set the grid for the 45-minute feature, so this will continue, I'm sure, for the rest of this evening.
I'm sure it will as well. I mean, the 45-minute feature will be one of longevity. I think there's going to be a few drivers who, even if they have difficulties off the start, could use that fast repair, get themselves back in towards some kind of contention. Sarakadas has had the car sent. That's very, very brave. Very brave indeed from Logan McKinsey to go down the inside of Shane Sarakadas. Sarakadas has gone wide. He's lost the position to both McKinsey and McKinley. All of a sudden, though, Andrew McKinley's got a great run out towards the chase. He's just about going to have a little bit of a pace advantage as they rise over the crest. He's going to favour himself to get this move done. And the aggression on display from Logan McKinsey in the end is going to cost him the place.
Yeah, well, I think he's going to find himself in quite a similar position to what we saw this time last lap, because down the inside goes McKinsey again, and he's going to fight that one, and he goes slightly off the circuit. But again, Dara, Andrew McKinley finds himself on the outside line. Sarika Desla is coming back to try and get involved with this one. Never shy of a battle. In fact, Sarika Desla and Kenyon, the two drivers in behind, battling for position in their AM class. So we've got two battles going on between both of the classes. Hardly anything to split the two of them. The Honda now back on the favourable inside line. Inverted positions this time round. The outside line is given to McKinsey, and McKinley tries it, but this time Logan makes it stick. Stays in front, but is the tow going to be enough for the Honda to try and launch a move into turn 2? Let's ride on board with Martin Kenyon, see what he sees ahead. A little bit of a gap to Sarika Desla, but it could go wrong quickly for these drivers if we get a late lunge by one of these three.
Yeah, I mean, we are onto the last lap now, so we'll have to keep an eye on where William Humphrey is on this final lap. But Martin Kenyon is trailing Sarika Desla and trailing Mark Parkhurst as they run their way up towards the hill. But as they go through, William Humphrey, I mean, what's he got now? One hand and a foot and three fingers on the title. Incredible.
Yeah, pretty much, Dara. I was just about to say it's one hand and then some for Humphrey, who converts yet another race win. That will see him take pole position for race 2. Cracking session by Adam Atherton. Had a strong qualifying. We said he needed a good result to try and mount a challenge onto that top 5. It's exactly what he's done ahead of Thomas Pugh. Nils Culler will win it in the AM class. Noel Brown will just finish ahead of Liam Fraser by 1/10 of a second as they cross the line. Let's cut back to this battle, which is still going on. It's broken up slightly, but I think we might see a three-peat here for this Honda going for the move again. Let's see if this time he can get himself on that favourable inside line. Of course, tricky to position the car down this section because you want to be able to open the corner going into the chase, but it might be beneficial for the Hyundai ahead to just stay to that left-hand side and force the issue going at the final two corners. They won't fancy Ben Smith getting in on this. That's not what McKinley wants to see on his last opportunity to try and take the position.
Yeah, Ben Smith's going to get through, though. I think the problem for McKinley is he had the option to go down the inside last lap, didn't go for it. It's going to send it here. There's a little bit of contact, the slightest kiss on the rear end of McKinsey, but Andrew's going to stay behind. Surely not going to be able to send it into the final corner. Would be, almost too bold and brave to really work. And you can see the defensive line from Logan. He doesn't have to really worry about the exit because the line is just on the exit of the corner. And Logan is just about going to hold off Andrew. Fantastic result for him.
Danny Weir crossed the line at first in the TCR AM class ahead of Gordon Hales by some margin. It's a good win there for Danny. Good haul of points actually ahead of Sarika Desla, only by one position. He saw out Martin Kenyon to get himself on the podium. Mark Parkhurst finishing in behind the two of them, and it was of course Anthony Hilton who crossed the line first in the TCR Pro category. Dara, that was a little bit too frantic for my liking, and I'm not sure if too many of these drivers will fancy a race that is 3 times the length of that one. That must have been pretty stressful for most of those guys in the cockpit there.
Yeah, I think there's going to have to be some measure added to race number 2, but they're going to know exactly what they need to do. They know exactly where they're going to be starting. It's where they finished, and titles could be won, not least this GT4 Pro category.
So then, starting with the results, as always, with the GT4 class, which was won out once again by the 398 DXT, Glasstec at DXT driver William Humphrey, nearly 5 seconds clear of the nearest challenger. Adam Atherton gets himself back on the podium once again, only his 3rd of the season. Thomas Pugh rounding out the top 3 for Axis Sim Sports ahead of Yannis Olber, who dropped 2 positions off the start, of course, was half a second behind his teammate at the end of qualifying, and in the end finished 3 positions worse off. Mitchell Costas doing well to score good points inside the top 5. He's only been there twice already this season, so that is arguably his joint best result so far in his championship campaign. Stephen Donnelly inside the top 6 ahead of Jeremy Ulemans and Marius Hibmer. Josh Bauer and Laurenston Auden inside the top 10. It will be points for Ben Smith, but he will not be pleased, finishing in 11th. And then sadly for Jeff Hibbert, he didn't make it onto the third lap and will not bring home any points.
Yeah, the headline news from that is that all William Humphrey needs to do in race number 2 is finish, and he will be the champion. It doesn't really matter where, because there's enough points for finishing last to get him the title. Over in the GT4 AMS, it was Niels Kula, the Latvian driver, who reignites his title ambitions with a win ahead of his 2 title rivals. Robin L. Brown and Liam Fraser were 2nd and 3rd, and barely a tenth of a second to split those two. Edward Grobe and Klaas Vellen 4th and 5th, with the Sweat Sim Racing driver in the top 4 once again. Luke Bailey was ahead of Rob Gregg and Daniel Poole. Dean Sheafby and John Ludbrook for the top 10, with Matt Stace on the lead lap and Charlie Sottard 1 lap down. Everybody scoring some points in this class.
Yeah, it's always what you like to see. Points good enough for P12 will be handed out, which is always nice to see then. It was a great, entertaining race there in this category, the TCR Pro Division. Won out, of course, by Anthony Hilton under the radar during that session. Apologies, Anthony, but there was too much going on for that one. Logan McKinsey and Andrew McKinley going right to the wire. 0.3 of a second between those two drivers as they cross the line in favour of the 1-2 for Team Shelter, who extend that championship lead at the front of the team's championship. Alok Iyengar, great result for him inside the top 4 ahead of Max Nevenchani for Flatline Racing Green. Scott Malcolm and James Howarth finished ahead of Jake Corley, who might be a little bit disappointed with that, but he was caught up in the early phase there in the dipper, which is so easy to do. Jaden Scotton and Kevin Marshall say should score points if Kevin crossed the line. 2 points, I would guess, will be enough, but not if he finished the race in the pit lane. But a top 10 for him if he does.
Difficult 2 laps down because there's only been 7 laps, so that's, pretty much 30% off. We'll have to wait and see if that does count. Finally, though, it's the TCRMs, and it was Danny Weir who became the 7th winner in this class this season. He held off Gordon Hales at the end, who really charged towards him. P3 went to championship leader Hussein Sarki-Dessler, who keeps that margin over the 100-point threshold. Martin Kenyon and Mark Parkhurst 4th and 5th. Those 3 in the end, very close together. Jason Haddington led home Andrew Fellows, and a Dean Sargent who was a lap down, who should pick up the points, and Steve Rubino 3 laps down, who I do not believe will pick up any points for that position.
Good stuff then. Good summary as always there. So now we wait for some drivers to head out on the circuit. Actually, I'm surprised, Dara, of course, around Mugello on Thursday when we had the wet conditions, it was obvious that drivers were going to try and make the most of that one. But I am surprised that in this session tonight, we have nobody out on the circuit. We've had nobody out on the circuit apart from, I think, one of the Sweat Sim Racing Mercedes who we saw at the entry to turn 2. But yeah, I feel like when you got 5 minutes just to maybe do the dipper on cold tyres, high fuel one more time, might have been a good opportunity for some of these guys, but no one chose to take it, actually. No one chose to take it, should I say.
Yeah, I think they're all just trying to recover mentally after what they've just gone through. Just have a little bit of a break and a sit down. But no, you're right. It is a very important track to nail, and the specifics are really, really quite critical. So, I'm also surprised that we're not seeing any movement in that regard. But hey, if the drivers are confident enough, we'll let them be confident enough. We'll just see if it pays off for them.
No, you make a good point, actually, because with the nature of this circuit, it's not only physically draining, it can also be mentally draining, not only for 15 minutes. So yeah, maybe some mental recuperation for those guys, knowing that they've got 45 minutes to go, of course. They'll have done, not everybody here, but some of these guys will have, of course, done the endurance over the weekend. So I know my team personally was doing 1 hour, just one stint, swap driver, just to keep the focus up. And kind of, you got to get yourself in the zone. Me personally, I felt like I've actually struggled to maintain focus on other circuits, when we maybe have to do a slightly longer stint, maybe 2 or 3 hours. But yeah, 1 hour around here, get locked in. And I'm sure these guys will be entering that mode now, knowing that it's a much longer race that they're about to have to contend with.
And when you have a longer race to think about, and 45 minutes really is going to be close to a full stint, realistically. That we saw at the weekend, it's going to be tricky. There isn't a million positions or a million laps to go through, but still, it's a tricky circuit to keep your concentration up at.
Yeah, it is. I'm just going to quickly blast through this one, Dara, because it was pretty tight last time out. So, William Humphrey will share the front row ahead of Adam Atherton, Thomas Pugh and Yanis Aubert inside the top 5. Notable for Nils Culler to start with a car in between he and Robin Noel Brown, who has managed to get himself ahead of Liam Fraser. It'll be Donnelly and Grobe, Ullemans and Himber the top 12, Klaas Vellen and Luke Bailey ahead of Josh Barra inside the top 15. Lawrence Denowden and Rob Gregg will start ahead of Daniel Poole, Dean Shisby and John Ludbrook, the top 20. Then we come through to the TCRs, critically, of course, with a few GT4s starting in behind them. Hilton, Weir, Hales and Smith in that GT4 Pro class. McKinsey and McKinley will continue their battle, I'm sure, as will Sarkadesla and Kenyon. Parkhurst, Iyengar, Haddington, Nevin Charney, Fellows and Malcolm inside the top 34 with Stace, Howarth, Sargent, Corley, Scotton and Charlie Stothard rounding out the grid at the bottom of the order. And I think we've got a handful more. Yes, Kevin Marshall's Steve Rubino, and sadly for Jeff Hibbert in that Pro class will start down there in P43, of course, having a short 1/3 of a lap to deliver that. It caught me off guard last time, Dara. Not this time, though. And I might give you the pleasure of leading us through what I'm sure will be another frantic opening phase here for our 45-minute feature.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be frantic. I think keeping it safe over the mountain is going to be key, but how many drivers are going to be willing to give themselves a little bit of time to think about how they're going to approach the mountain? We will find out. Humphrey, of course, just needs to finish this race to win the title. He knows that. He won't want to go too fast, too quickly. Adam Atherton trying to get the jump, but he's not going to get it. We are racing here at Bathurst. Good start for William Humphrey. Good start as well on the inside for Thomas Pugh and Yanis Aubert, trying to shuffle the German back once again, but Aubert around the outside will commit himself into P3, and a good move made there. They go side by side, 2 by 2 through the opening turn as we roll back through a lot of the GT4 AMs and in towards the TCR categories. Hilton with a good start from the front of the field, and Danny Weir with a good start from the front of the field in their respective classes. Liam Fraser past Robin Noel Brown, though. That's going to be important towards the front of the GT4 AMs. They're single file in the top 5 here at the front of the GT4 Pros, but they're not going to be giving an inch to the mid-pack.
Yeah, a few two wide scenarios there. That's Danny Weir, I believe. Robin Noel Brown is down around the order. He's off the track there on the left-hand side. That could cause a little bit of a problem for some of these drivers. I'm trying to get onto him, but he just keeps dropping down the order. There he is. He's done so well to keep that out of any sort of drama. He'll get himself spun round, but that's such a tricky place to be. Kevin Marshall says, stay Scotton. They've had an issue somewhere higher up the grid. So far, though, the traffic remains clear. Too wide through there. That's not exactly what you want to do, because that's going to mean that you're too wide through this section. Thankfully, they've managed to back out just in time. I think that's Ben Smith. Yeah, he's got the pace. He's a little bit out of position after that first result, so he'll be putting some serious pressure on these guys. We saw him try to make a move on Nils Culler. Is he going to do the same thing on Lawrence Denowden? No, he doesn't. Stays put for the time being. Through the dipper for the first time. Aubert's got past Pugh at the front of the grid. Himber has had a great start at the front. He's 5 positions up as they exit Forest Elbow. Now, the moment of calm for these top 10 drivers as we exit that section. And there is Lawrence Denowden. I wonder if that's contact potentially with Ben Smith again. We'll have to wait and see. This time, though, not as chaotic as we had on that opening lap, thankfully.
No, we've got to be very careful with Lawrence Denowden and how he gets himself out of that position. Ben Smith, before he overtook, well, actually right now, would be only holding on to his P2 in the championship as it stands by a handful of points to Yanis Aubert. So he knows he needs to make moves early on here. Logan McKinsey getting through on Anthony Hilton, trying to find a way to, keep the pace high as the GT4's battle in front of him. The opening lap comes to an end with Humphrey still leading, with Cooler still leading. McKinsey's going to take the lead, and I think Danny Weir's just about going to hold the lead in the TCRM. So 3 of the 4 classes have seen the leaders stay in position, and in the other class, the TCR Pros, the P2 driver's got towards the front, is looking further back. That's going to be close. That's Andrew McKinley inside line on race 1 winner. Anthony Hilton's going to get it done. A little bit of argy-bargy, but I think Hilton almost drove into the side of him there.
Yeah, I think it was sort of, fair pressure for the time being while the team shelter try and defend their place at the front of the order. But who would that been? Sorry, McKinley was having absolutely none of it. And, he was forced right against the pit wall in the end, drifted over slightly, gave the Audi a little piece of it. Thankfully, though, they've both kept it in a straight line. Very easy, actually, for the Audi to have ran off the runoff at turn 1, which would have more or less spelled the end of his session. Pretty tricky place to get out of there. Back toward the front, Aubert putting pressure on Adam Atherton, who had a great first race. Let's see what his longevity is like. Let's see what his race pace is like against the German, who's putting him under pressure right at the start of this race. William Humphrey, 1.8 seconds clear, checked out at the moment, the champion in his division. All he has to do, as Dara said earlier, is score a point. He's currently on to bring home 100, which, if you know anything about maths, is more than one.
Yes, that much is true. That's not quite the GCSE sound to the question, but hopefully, hopefully everyone's got that one nailed down. Albert, though, looking for a move. Adam Atherton, inside, outside. It's going to have to be the inside line when we get towards the chase, but losing a little bit of momentum down the straight. That Mercedes looks a little bit nippier in the straight line compared to the Porsche, and Albert having to send it late on the brakes. He's got the overlap, he's got the run. Oh, he's got it stopped, but not in time to cover off the up and under, and Adam Atherton gets back to P2. The contact between the cars is going to allow Pugh through, though, and well, I don't think there's going to be happy words between the two of them.
No, that was very avoidable, I feel like, but nonetheless, that's Atherton off the circuit now. Has he recovered? No, he's still on the gravel trap. He's reset at the pit. No, he hasn't. He's there. Just a little bit of a connection issue. So that's Adam down in P18 overall, 8 in class. Not what he would have fancied. Klaas Vellen there in a very... Is that Klaas Vellen? I'm not sure who that is, actually. Yes, it is Klaas Vellen. Yes, in a pretty difficult position. Back to the pit lane, getting himself out the way. And this is Nils Kuller now, leading the way in that AM class as Aubert looks to go up the inside. Yes, he does. Gets that move done nicely. Kuller knows that he doesn't have to battle that one too much, although now he has the Mercedes of his championship challenger right in behind him. Noah Brown, nowhere to be seen after that first spin, of course. He's all the way down in P31 overall, so it really is a straight shot between these two, and that is not what Noah Brown wanted in such a critical race where double points are on offer. While his two championship rivals battle for the lead, he's well and out down the order. P9 in class at the moment, so he's still bringing home some points, but that will not bode well going into the final round.
Won't. And as things stand, if Noel Brown was to finish in P9, he'd only pick up 42 points. Niels Kuhler and Liam Fraser being first and second would pick up a hell of a lot more. It would mean that Niels Kuhler's the championship leader by 42. That's a lie. By 14 points in this session. That's how Ben Smith and Lawrence and Alden got together. Didn't really look like it was the ideal line for those two down there.
No, the Mercedes just losing the rear end as he went through the right-hander. So easy to do. Carrying a little bit too much speed for what the car was prepared for there. And I'm not sure, I couldn't quite see on the replay if you got a helping hand into the barrier, but it's so tricky to avoid anybody coming into that corner. Aubert looking to put the challenge back on the man. Same place again. This time the Porsche looks to go around the outside. Once again, roles reversed between another one of the Axis SimSport cars and Janus Aubert, this time up the inside going into the final corner. Thomas Pugh switching positions, thinking about a move, backs out. Aubert up into P2 at the moment. His teammate Humphrey just up there in the distance, heading into turn 1 already. 6.5 seconds the difference between these two. Let's ride on board with Liam Fraser, see how he gets on as they go through turn 1 up the hill. It looks like he's got a better run out of the first corner than the Porsche does ahead, and that could bode him well to make a move going into turn 2, which has hit the lead of his class.
Yeah, let's see if Fraser can try and get himself to the front as they work their way in towards turn number 2. Iyenga's come down the pit lane in the TCR Pros. He must have picked up some damage somewhere, but he is down the order. Fraser not able to get close enough to Nils Kuhler to make any kind of lunge at turn number 2, and then make the way up towards the cutting. You're not going to be looking for moves here either, and he's going to have to wait probably until the chase in about a minute and a half's time, well, a minute's time, to make any kind of overtake for the lead of his class, and that's the kind of strategy that you have to do lap after lap here at Bathurst is make moves where you can, but then be smart enough to wait, bide your time, and not really force anything, particularly in these difficult, single file parts of the racetrack.
Yeah, I'm looking up and down the timing tower to see if we've got any major battles on the horizon, but really, it's actually a lot of guys in different classes sharing this part of the circuit. Let's take a look. Here's Logan McKenzie. He leads the way, coming up and over the top of the hill at the moment. He leads the way in the TCR Pro Division. Danny Weir and Gordon Hales is about the closest battle that we have on the circuit there. Danny in behind the Hyundai ahead, so he is under pressure from Scott Malcolm in the Pro class, but this is the closest that we've got on the cards at the moment. Going well on a Thursday night for Danny at the moment. He'll be practicing a little bit ahead of that one, where he knows he's got to perform in, of course, what is the final race of the season. That's a little bit deep by the Honda. Contact against the left-hand side of the wall. That's going to invite not only the Honda through, but also nearly turned in on him there did Danny, as Charlie Stothard gets himself through, and that's a little bit of a wobble. Not only is it difficult to recover from that, you've also got to just settle yourself back down again, let the heart rate come back down, because that was nearly a very scary moment for the DXT driver there.
Yeah, luckily to avoid any more of an issue through there, we've got Yannis Albert in pit lane. Has he got damage in the 3-2-1? Is he just taking the early pit stop? I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure where else he'd be coming down pit lane.
He can't have got...
hit the instant, let me know.
No, surely not already. I mean, potentially, but surely not. Let's see. Does he go up on the jacks? He won't change tyres. Looks like a refuel, because a fast repair will be done by now. So he's in for his stop, which is taken early. And he's missed his... Did he miss his... What's he doing? He's missed his pit box by a long way. Let's cut away from that, because I'm not entirely sure what Yannis was doing there. I've never seen anybody go backwards and forwards once, never mind 2 or 3 times there. So not quite sure what was going on there for one of the lead Porsche drivers. Nearly 3 wide going into that corner. Audi ahead of the 2 Hondas. That's Mark Parkhurst who's got himself past Sarika Desler, the car in behind, the DXC driver of James Howarth in that Pro division. So Parkhurst in a pretty favourable position at the moment. He's only had 2 P3s, currently finds himself in P2, riding in what will be his best result of the season, but still such a long way to go. Only 10 minutes through this race, 34 left to go. I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't fancy being in a league racing environment with these guys, because it's so competitive and everyone is willing to risk it all, really, just to get a move done.
Yeah, and at this stage of the season, of course they would. A lot of championship battles yet to be decided. Drivers fighting for every single position. You know, yeah, they may not get into the top 3, but they're still going to go for it. Great move to the inside at Forest Gully, but that is absolutely glorious. That's a move of the day so far. Really opportunistic, really clean. Gets it done absolutely beautifully. Doesn't lose any momentum either. He's up into the top 5, of course. He's just overtaken. That's Edward Grobe in that Mercedes car. So he's only now got 2 more AMs to negotiate his way through, along with 4 pros. He's 7th on the road, and after spinning on the opening lap in race 1, that's a decent enough recovery.
Yeah, it's 2 seconds now to Jeremy Ullman's in P4 in class. That's the next man on track. Here he is, just coming out of the next corner at the moment. So Ben Smith definitely has the pace. His best lap is 3 seconds quicker than... That can't be right, because his last lap, maybe that was invalid. It's saying that Ullman's best lap was a 17, but his last lap was a 15, so that doesn't quite add up, potentially invalid. There it is, a 15.2 for Ullman's, but it's a 14.7 for Ben Smith, so about half a second difference between these 2 drivers. Ben will fancy his chances at getting up, potentially back onto the podium. Thomas Pugh and Nils Culler still sharing the same part of the circuit. Liam Fraser just dropping off the back of this one ever so slightly. This will continue on, of course. So much left in the offing. And I wonder, Dara, maybe you've seen this more than I have on the broadcast over the weekend, but undercut quite powerful here? Or was it potentially the other way around?
It depends, really. I think we aren't seeing as high a fuel loads being put into the cars, so the undercut was more difficult over the weekend because so much fuel would have been put in the car that really they were just slower, even if they were on new tyres. You know, just down the straights, the car being weighed down a little bit means it was just going to naturally go that little bit slower. I don't think the undercut's going to be that powerful here as an undercut. You may give yourself better track position, but then again, if you undercut, you're going to put yourself into some more traffic, so may have to make some more moves. So I think I would rather extend as long as I possibly could in this race, or if I was the likes of Humphrey or Pugh, wait until you get towards the back of the field in terms of where the TCR pros are, or TCR AMs are, and then make the move. Make them move into the pit lane when you have that possibility of having to lap some cars. Here is William Humphrey. I think Dean Sargent crossed the line about 20-30 seconds ago, so we've still got quite a little while before he catches them up, but I think in about 10 minutes time, I reckon should be a good time for him to pit.
Yes, you're right. Dean Sargent has just across the start-finish line, actually. So we will be just about...
But he's 30 seconds behind Danny Weir.
Of course, yeah. So still a big gap. But at the moment, it's Humphrey who's got a nice little clean... a nice little... what am I trying to say? He's got clean air at the moment, so he doesn't have to worry about that at the moment. Can continue doing what he's doing. However, look at this. Liam Fraser, he's in the pit lane. I wonder if that's strategic, thinking about if he can do the undercut on Nils Culler. So he comes in trying to make an efficient pit stop. Does it look a little bit wobbly, that Mercedes on the right-hand side? I'm not quite sure. Let's just go... On by stop, so I can't check him just yet. It's a quick stop as he will refuel. But it'll be interesting to see if anyone can manage to get the pits done in the pit, the overtakes done, sorry, in the pit lane together. There's Sarkadesla. He's off over the gravel trap, and that's going to be is it going to be a tank slapper? Yes, it is. That's a big hit into that tyre barrier. That gravel did nothing to slow down that Honda.
Yeah, the Honda not really doing exactly what he wanted it to, and Sarkadesla, it's not a good looking car now, is it? We'll see it again. Number 8, there's a GT4 coming through the field, or coming through the pack. Going left, going right, and there's going to be contact. There's big contact. GT4 not really keeping to an inside line. Sarkadesla not really with anything to do. And I can't remember the last time I saw somebody hit those tyre barrier. Or that tyre barrier.
No, neither can I, actually. I was just about to say the same thing. James Howarth and Mark Parkhurst have come together as well. That is some significant damage on the front of that Honda. Let's see how that happened. Is that going into turn 1? A pretty unusual place to pick up such big damage. The Mercedes once again up the inside. Does the Audi spin ahead? Yes, he does. And Howarth, sadly, quite a minor contact there for the damage on the front of that one. But it looks as though Howarth just couldn't quite stay out of the way of that one. I'm not sure. Was that Lawrence and Auden trying to get through on the inside line? Yeah, the Audi just kind of turns into him a little bit. And then it's passenger, sadly, for James Howarth, who's back in the pits. Danny Weir putting pressure on the outside, not getting taken by 2 of those GT4 drivers at the moment. P6 in class, not quite a repeat of his earlier efforts.
Not quite, but we'll still see if there can be more moves from him and anybody else towards the end of this race. We've still got half an hour to go here, more than enough time to see things unfold and develop. Getting a little bit worrying, though, up towards the cutting. A few cars, a few GT4s and TCRs crossing over in a way that I don't think that'll be particularly comfortable for quite a few people. Liam Fraser being overtaken there by Yannis Albert. Of course, he's made his pit stop. And Yannis will try and continue up the road. Liam Fraser trying to do the best he can to keep himself in championship contention. Of course, Robin Brown down the order. But Niels Cooler at the front of the field needs to try and make sure that he can at least stay close to Niels, if not overtake him before the end of this race. But with about, 30 minutes to go, we're going to have, about 12, 13 more laps in this race, which isn't a long time. But, if you can gain a second or two over the mountain on some of your rivals every single lap, it's going to feel like you're going through much quicker than you actually could be.
Yeah, that will really start to add up if anybody can do that. There's a little bit of context, a little bit of detail in chat regarding Liam Fraser's pit stop. He had a bit of an issue with a car who'd made a bit of a mistake of his own. Apparently picked up some steering damage, went into the pit lane early, but of course, with that one fast repair and having to serve that mandatory stop anyway, it won't impact the race too much, of course. You can just come in, go on this sort of alternate strategy, pitting a little bit early, and then go through until the end. What is bad is when you get that damage right at the start of the race, and you're not able to fuel your way to the checkered flag. So fingers crossed for the Moonshiner driver that he's been able to cross over that threshold, which I would think that he will be able to, and so he can now just go eyes on track for the rest of the remaining 27 minutes, try and make up those positions. But he's got a big gap once he can, whether he keeps up with Yannis Albert or not, there's a big gap ahead to Adam Atherton after that one, and then he'll have to wait and see once the rest of the cars come back into the pit lane where he will end up. Ben Smith getting his way past Jeremy Ulemans on the exit of Forest Elbow. A nice place to get through. Jeremy perhaps not best pleased about that move. Was it a little bit scrappy between the two Porsches? Got it done nice and early, actually. I'm not quite sure what Ulemans was thinking there. I thought maybe there might have been a little bit of a touch as they set themselves up in the inside line. Nice and easily done. And that's a nice move there by Ben Smith. Now, inside the top 3 in class, back where he will feel like he belongs. But it's such a big gap ahead to Thomas Pugh. something that might be quite difficult to overcome.
Yeah, but space to drive into, really, a good window for him to try and get a little bit more time. Spa is going to have a little window, but that's because he spun at the final corner and is going to drop down the order somewhat. This is the group of Luke Bailey and Dean Cheeseby that he was a part of, but not anymore. Did Luke Bailey give him a bit of a nudge around? Let's see. Yes, is the short answer. And Luke Bailey has missed his braking point by, quite a considerable distance in terms of how long that braking zone actually is. And he's just given a bit of a helping hand to Joe Sparrow, who, lolly-dolly are going on beautifully, and then all of a sudden, there's your culprit.
Yeah, sadly for him, it was just as he went to turn into the corner. It might not have been so bad if it was a little bit earlier in the braking zone, but oh, has he gone again there in the background? Who was that? Let me find him. Someone was sideways there. It is Sparrow. He's gone again. No rear wing on the back of that Porsche. Here come a couple of the DXT drivers. That's an unfortunate series of events there for Mr. Sparrow, who definitely has a little bit of steering damage, I think, on that car. That'll be tricky through the right-handers, I think. It'll be very oversteery. Oh, and look at that. A little diversion over to the left-hand side. Slow there as he gets himself through nicely. That's Daniel Poole struggling to keep his car out of the barrier here. This is going to... I want to ride on board with Joe here because I get a feeling that as he heads over these corners, and particularly over Skyline, that Porsche is going to feel particularly challenging to keep in a straight line. He'll probably have to come into the pit lane at the end of this lap. Up and over the curb. That's not quite the entry that you want. Let's see how it handles down here. Oh, I wouldn't like to be handling this Porsche at the moment. He's doing pretty well. But one snap of oversteer or one slight understeer on the left-hander will put you in the wall.
Yeah, it'll be curtains if he's not careful. Doing a good job, though. Oh, you can just see that rear end wanting to walk around on him as he works his way in towards Forest's elbow. Does a good job, really, to keep it going with the pressure in behind. But you're right, I think he almost certainly has to come into the pit lane. Adam Atherton inside line. He's not going to get that move done because he's gone a little bit too deep into the corner. He's going to end up losing out to Luke Bailey. And he's actually got two cars to overtake now, rather than the one he had before. Or maybe not, because Luke comes into the pit lane. That's going to work out well. But Adam Atherton, as Luke will make his one and what he hopes will be only pit stop in this race. Sparrow losing out a couple of positions on the straight, flashing of the lights as well. Let's see if he comes down pit road this time.
Flashing of the lights against his teammate, of all people. He must be saying bye-bye as he crosses over those cones into the pit lane. Such a tricky pit lane entrance here. A little set of mini chicanes as you come into what is, I believe, a 50-kilometre pit lane speed limit, so it feels awfully slow travelling down there. McKinley is getting passed by Noah Brown, who's recovering okay from his earlier spin. Demoted him to P9 in class, back up to P7, so he's getting there, but he's got a little bit of... well, actually, he's only about 4 seconds now behind the driver ahead, so it's not too bad for him. He's got plenty of time to overdo that one. Charlie Stothard now up the inside of the one of the leading TCR drivers, and Logan McKenzie inside the top 13 on the circuit. Can you believe it? We were actually, Dara, we've said quite a few times this season, wouldn't it be interesting if one of these TCRs finished inside the top 15? He's in the top 13. Noel Brown trying to go around the outside there, and he's met the barrier for his efforts.
Yeah, no, well, he's met the barrier a few times today, hasn't he?
Yes,
2-2-1 championship leader coming into this race. You might make a friend, you never know. But we'll have to see if he's able to get through on Logan McKenzie. You'd think he would be able to, but he's going to have to wait until the exit of Forest's elbow. So difficult, really, for these GT4s to keep pace up when coming through the field, when they have to, realistically, accept the fact that they're going to lose so much time as they work their way over the top of the mountain. No room for them to make any kind of move. They're just not fast enough. It's not like you've got a GT3 and a hypercar to work your way through. The pace advantage is minimal for the GT4s, and most of that is made up down the straight. So, yeah, they'll work their way through Forest's elbow, and I think it'll give a chance for Robin Oldbrand to make the move now, but some of the damage and time loss has already been done. Yeah,
nice cluster of cars here. Pressure there by Adam Atherton. That Porsche of Dean Sheesby really struggling. Actually, damage on the front end, damage on the rear end. Dean is going to come in now for that fast repair, which is probably the best option that he could imagine. Joe Sparrow, sadly for him, has had another issue. I mean, he'll be seriously lacking downforce on that Porsche. I wonder... Oh, he had just come into the pit lane, of course, to get his fast repair. And on his outlap, he's spun it on the right-hander there, and he's lost his rear wing for good measure. Oh, disastrous there for the JSC driver.
Yeah, and I obviously not going to be able to repair that one too quickly either. It's not been a good day for Joe Sparrow at all. I mean, if he finishes, he'll still pick up the points, and it's going to be big points, of course, double points in these 45-minute races, but yeah, not many, and he's not going to be overly pleased with how he's been able to work through today. William Humphrey's going to be delighted because he's going to have a title at the end of it, unless he crashes at the end of this race, which I think would surprise more than a few people. Comes through, Forrest Selbo will get through on the 186 of... Who is that he's lapping right now? Is it...
Jaden Scotton.
Jaden Scott, thank you.
Jaden
I was looking
Scott.
up and down the list of the numbers trying to find the 186. And I couldn't find it, but that's because Jaden Scott is down in P31. But that is going to be the one lap that has been put on him by William Humphrey. Great pace so far for William, and a 17-second lead. I mean, you can't really ask for much more, can you?
No, not really. And of course, having a look there at the drivers who have served their pit stop, of course, nobody inside the top 7 has come in yet. So let's see how Yannis O'Byrne, Liam Fraser, even Stephen Donnelly potentially jump up the order a little bit once that starts to happen. As we said earlier, Dara, Humphrey deciding to stay out, even though he's starting to get on the back of these TCRs, so not feeling impeded enough, of course. Looking ahead, he's got a nice, again, another stint of clean air, but he will soon gain on Anthony Hilton, Alec Iyenga, and Steve Rubino in those TCRs. He will have Mitchell Costas in another GT4. That will be coming up soon as well for the current leader of the field. But a nice 17-second gap, as we say, over Thomas Pugh. That's exactly what he wants, and he knows that he can afford himself, well, an incident if he has to have one, and he might be okay. Thankfully, William had nothing of the sort when he did his 4 or 5 hours around here last weekend. There was just the 3 of us. So Will got his definitely got his fair share of track time, and that could be paying dividends now as he looks to lead the race. Hasn't hit the wall. Wow, well, I said he hasn't hit the wall, and then he had a slight little scrape there. And that's what we said during qualifying, Dara. I don't think there'll be many drivers pushing the limits to the edge of the barrier quite as much as this man is at the moment, and even with such a comfortable margin, still pushing the limits and not leaving anything out there.
Yeah, and he's careering towards a 200-point lead in the championship and a points tally of 1,060 points from 19 races. I mean, he's picked up 1,128 if he's to win this race in the 21, but he has to drop 60 out of those points because that was his worst evening of the season to this point. He's going to lap yet another car as well. He's just going through them as if there's no tomorrow, and when you've got a pace advantage down the straight, it's pretty easy anyway. But when he comes into the pit lane, it will be his prerogative, but he's got a really big gap to try and put himself into. I think really he's just going to find a good gap to put himself into, and if he can wait for everybody else to pit before him, that's really the ideal situation. Exactly,
yeah, he's definitely in control at the moment, and he's got no pressure anywhere around him. However, we do have a little bit of pressure here. Scott Malcolm under pressure from Logan McKinsey. This is for the lead, albeit I think in and around the pit stop window. Scott Malcolm yet to pit, actually under pressure from McKinsey, so he will inherit that position very shortly, I'm sure. Let's just ride on board for a short while, see how the championship challenger differs to somebody in equal machinery, more or less, and how much speed they're carrying over this section, of course. Flat out it was over the weekend, I'm sure. Flat out in the GT4. Up that right-hander, through this left-hander. A little bit of a wobble there by the Honda. You can see the difference in confidence coming away from the walls and not quite pushing the limits to the apex of the wall either for Scott Malcolm, making it a little bit tricky for McKinsey to get by. He's going to have to think about something, probably. We'll have to try and get a good exit on at the end of the dipper. Going onto the back straight. Oh, is he going to fancy it up the inside? It would be risky. Probably not worth it at the moment. Just sawing at the steering wheel there, trying to keep his machine in the right order. Gets his foot down. That will probably be enough for McKinsey to get that move done by the time they get into the chase. But it really is intriguing to see the difference between how someone right at the front of their championship does battle against, of course, somebody not quite at their pace. But interestingly, it's the Lumen driver who's, well, his teammate challenging at the front of the championship, and he hasn't quite defended away McKinsey there, but it's not really his place to do that. I don't think at the moment. We may well see Scott coming into the pit lane anytime soon, but he's set free McKinsey, and McKinley has a 3.5 second gap to overcome if he wants to try and hang on to what could be one of the final race wins of the season for either of these, because it's yeah, they're running out of opportunities, aren't they?
Yeah, only 3 more races, including this one, as they will know, but they've got enough between them so far this season. McKinsey, of course, having 11 wins, McKinley with 8 so far. Of course, the only other win of the season was in race 1 this evening, went to Anthony Hilton. They've won every other race between them. And it has ebbed and flowed. McKinsey won the opening 2, McKinley won the next 5, 2 for McKinsey, 2 for McKinley, the next 5 for McKinsey. It really has been a real tussle to really gain momentum between the two of them. And McKinsey, at the moment, looking like he's doing a good enough job to close that gap further. But I'm sure he won't be, overjoyed with the fact that he still has to close down coming into this race. A 49-point gap in 3 races. It's going to be tricky to do so. And he's going to have to require mistakes from Andrew.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're saying, right? It's sometimes not enough to just beat him. You've got to hope that something else happens to him. Steve Rubino comes into the pit lane. That will be Gordon Hales then, 30 seconds clear of these 2 drivers who have also been in the pit lane. So it's a masterclass at the moment for Mr. Hales, all the way up inside what is the top 17 on the road. These guys battling over P29, so a hell of a lot of drivers separating the guys in the TCR AM class. Kenyon moves over to one side to allow Danny Weir through. Is that slowdown related potentially for Kenyon? But that's Danny, who's moved his way up the field nicely. Had a bit of an issue off the start. He's down 7 places overall. However, he has gained 1 in class. So good news for Danny. Won the opening round. And now look at this. I've just got something on my warning. Logan McKenzie has just crashed and he's back in the pit lane.
Oh no. And is that curtains for the championship? Very possibly. I mean, Andrew McKinley could win it in this race if he gains enough points here on Logan McKenzie. What's happened to Logan?
Oh.
What has happened to Logan?
Did
I miss it?
No, I don't think so, mate. Let's have a look. Straight from the gyro. He's... Looks like he's at racing speed. Maybe that's something that's happened. Either a hardware issue or maybe something that's happened in person to make him retire from the session. This is what his championship rival saw. You can see him there. He disappears in behind the corner. And when he exits, he just gets on by and inherits the lead of the race. So yes, I fear that could be championship over in the GT4 Pro Class. I'm sure not the way that that Mr. McKinley would like it to have been done, but that's what has happened, and he's maybe just got to take that now and, full steam ahead for the last couple of races.
Yeah, definitely. Whoa, it's Hilton. Hello. Hilton's gone into the wall. I don't know how. Well, we've caught that at a good time. I don't know how and why he's done that. Going deep into the corner, he's going to be heavily damaged. He's just going to have to turn back to pit lane. That's disaster for Anthony Hilton. That drops him back a full lap. If he got a little bit further, he may have been able to, drop not back, not very far, but another full lap behind. That's disaster for him.
Yeah, and as we enter the final, the final third of this race, that will give Mr. Alakienga a great position toward the front of the standings. A little bit of damage on his machine, but it will be, I think, his best result of the season if he can hang on to it. Yes, he's only had a couple of P4s actually right at the start of the season, but since then he's been only back inside the top 6 on 1 occasion. So this will be great for him coming into that final part of the championship. Things just starting to break up a little bit. Not too much going on out there on track. We've got Yannis Aubert, who's rejoined for company. Adam Atherton, we saw these two doing battle earlier on. However, Adam hasn't been in the pit lane yet, so he will soon come in. Top 4 still yet to box. Everybody in the GT4 AM class has been in the pit lane, or at least anybody in contention at the front has been in the pit lane. Robin Earl Brown has not, so he may lose that position slightly. And here comes Edward Grobe making a move on Charlie Stothard. This is in class. The battle for P4 is going to be in favour to the Mercedes up the inside of P2. Is he going to get that one done? Difficult to hang it around the outside when he gets stuck on the alternate line, I should say, there through turn 2. And that is the Mercedes up into P4, when we may inherit a few extra places actually once the likes of Noel Brown come into the pit lane. What I'm sure will be very shortly.
Yeah, I can't imagine we're going to be waiting too much longer. There's only 12 minutes to go in this race, and as William Humphries has come across the line, there should be... Ooh, I think we could even have 5 more laps to go here, depending on how long William Humphrey spends in the pit lane. In fact, yeah, it surely will be 5 laps to go, because he's just about going to make it. He's just about going to make it to the end of the 5th with a pit stop that he has to take. It's almost certainly going to be just that to get us to the end of this race. Yannis Albert getting his nose cut off by Adam Atherton. Is he going to send it up the inside? These two have already had contact down here in this race. And we've got a little bit more. Adam Atherton spinning around. Yannis Albert on the inside line. He sent it late. There was contact. And the 3-4-6 has come off much worse than the 3-2-1.
Yeah, interesting one. I mean, I could kind of see it coming, to be perfectly honest. However, I mean, no defence. However, Adam hasn't been in the pit lane yet, so it serves him no benefit to defend that position. He would arguably, knowing that Yannis maybe has the pace and knowing that he still has to come into the box, he would have saved himself a little bit of race time, just letting him through. But in the end, it's cost him again. He is now in the pit lane. I wonder if he reset or if in that time he's been able to drive into the box. But all the while, that's all back into the top 3. 25 seconds off the back of Thomas Pugh in what will be probably a 40-second stop. So Yannis could come out back in P2. Humphrey, however, is a further 25 seconds clear. So he's 50 seconds ahead of his teammate at the moment as he looks to try and get past a few more of these GT4s. A little bit unconventional. Oh, and oh my goodness.
Oh.
That was completely self-induced there by the Audi in behind. I'm not sure. Oh, we don't see that.
I think there's damage on that car.
I think so, yeah. It was wobbly, and then he just almost took off a little bit there. Robin Noel Brown trying to go around Donnelly. He's let that one done. Obliged to the AM driver. And, yeah, very strange there by that Audi. But I'm really intrigued as how long Humphrey's going to make that car go, because there's only 9.5 minutes left here, and he hasn't come into the pit lane yet. You'd think he'd be nearly out of fuel.
Well, he's come in right now. Perfect timing for you, Joe.
Oh, there we go.
He has just made it down pit lane. This will be his one and only pit stop. When he comes out of the pit lane, he should have 4 laps to go, because 4 laps would be about 8 minutes and 56 seconds. And he's crossed the line now. You can see him still trundling down to his pit box. Yeah, we're definitely going to have 4 laps to go here. Thomas Pugh's going to follow him down into pit lane as well, as William Humphrey will get stopped on his marks. There, let's go all the way to the end of the pit lane by virtue of starting on the pole position. And he will take his pit stop, take the little bit of fuel that he needs, and get on his merry way. But it should be... Oh, it's going to be very close, actually. Whether we have 4 or 5 to go. It's going to come down to a second or 2 here.
Here we go then. It's kicking off in the battle at the front of the GT4 AM class. Liam Fraser putting pressure on Nils Culler. They've had a good night's racing so far, the pair of them, forcing him over to the pit wall for the Mercedes, not making it easy as the Porsche, as you wouldn't make it easy, dives over to the outside line, looking to get the run. He's going to concede that position through turn 1 in the hope that the Porsche gets the run up the hill. Let's see, does he have it? Is he right on board? Not quite. That Mercedes is actually pulling away slightly, I think. Difficult to get the run on the inside line, but Liam Fraser has done awfully well to make that happen. In the second phase, though, it looks as though the slipstream taking effect for that Porsche, but sadly, the corner came a little bit too soon for Nils Culler. Now let's see what these two are made of. Does Liam Fraser have the minerals to sort of extend that margin up this tricky mountain section, or will Nils Culler stay right behind him and tell him that you're not going to get away from me in the corners? You might get away from me in a straight line, but he could keep the pressure on. 7 minutes to go here. As you said, Dara, not many laps at all, not many opportunities to try and reclaim this place for Nils Culler, so it really has to be very soon. Wobbly there by the Mercedes, over the curb, bumpy. These two are not going to give each other any moment to relax here. It's going to be full focus in each other's mirrors for the rest of this race. That's not quite the preferred line. That's really going to hamper the Porsche on the run down to the hill. And if the Mercedes can make it work and capitalise, he could start to run away with it. He's running away a little bit now already.
Yeah, I think it's critical for Liam Fraser to keep ahead of Niels Kula here. Of course, Niels Kula, I mean, it's a 20-point swing depending on who's able to win out in this battle. And coming into this race, they're 4 points apart, so really important. I mean, Liam Fraser can go from third to first in one of the final races of the season if he's able to win this one, but he's going to have to be very much aware. Niels Kula's got a little bit more problems that don't necessarily concern him. It's a pro driver coming through, and we'll just about get through, which means that there's basically a 2-second gap at the moment between the top two in the GT4 AMs, and the move was made just a couple of minutes ago. So really bad news for the Latvian driver. He's got to be careful that he doesn't lose too much time to Robin Noel Brown, because even though he spun on the opening lap, he's shown some good pace since. And I mean, he was far more than 14.5 seconds behind on the opening lap. But he's now right around and in contention.
Yeah, best part of a 1.5 seconds difference for Noel Brown. So even if he keeps that rate up for the rest of the session, it'll be very difficult for him to overcome that. So I think as long as Nils keeps it in the right place, is that Noel Brown back in the pit lane comes Noel Brown. So terrible session for him. That could really cost him in this championship, actually.
I wonder if, he pitted on the opening lap to fix any damage and hadn't come back into the pit lane since, had to pit for fuel even. Would make sense if he had, a fuel tank that was 1 lap shorter than Humphrey and P, because they came in last lap, of course. So Noel Brown into the pit lane should lose out to Greg Sheesby and Luke Bailey. Maybe able to come out ahead of Charlie Stoddard, though. So silver lining, I mean, the most silver of silver linings, but still, points on offer for Robin L. Brown, and that's better than what could have been said for him at the start of this race when it didn't look too good.
Well, Noel Brown making his way out of the pit box now. I think he should be clear. Yes, he is well clear of Charlie Stothard. Here he is, already making his way up the bank toward turn 2. So it will be P7. Not the worst, but not the best either. Up the inside goes Adam Atherton. That Porsche of Ullman's still, well, that rear wing, that won't do him any favours at any part of this racing circuit. Daniel Poole trying to get himself past Clyde Vellen as we enter the final 5 minutes of this session. Yannis Olber did do the undercut over Thomas Pugh, gets himself back inside the top 2. It's a 1-2 for the Glasstec DXC team at the moment, which bodes well, while the Team Shelter guys haven't had the best second session, so it'll be heating up in that team's championship. And where is Ludbrook with us tonight? I'm thinking Ludbrook and Noel Brown. Sarika Desler not scoring that well. He's in P5 at the moment, actually, so he's still scoring pretty good points. But that battle in the teams between the top 3, that's all to play for, I think, at this point, Dara, next week. I don't have the maths, but I think it was pretty tight coming into it. It's been pretty sparse between those 3 teams, and nothing to say that it could go any which way this time next week.
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way. It's the closest battle in the GT4 AMs, of course, and there's so much to be played for at the front of the field, not just there, but across a couple of the other classes as well. I was looking at the time. William Humphrey, I think, if he doesn't slow down at all, will cross the line with about a second or 2 in hand to get us a 3rd lap here. He could control this race and give us a 1 lap shorter race, or he could go an extra couple of minutes and give everyone a little bit more time to fight this one out, make it pretty much a 50-minute race here in New South Wales. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. I think there's a few drivers who wouldn't mind it being an extra lap, a few that would like it to be shortened. Jaden Scotton would want the extra lap. Scott Malcolm wouldn't want that at all. Scotton looking for a move here. That's Albert sniffing around as well. Albert got to be careful not to get himself too involved, and it got close, but they're not going to make contact up the hill at the cutting. Very nice little battle. Albert up and under. That's beautiful from him.
Yeah, 3 wide momentarily there. I want to watch that from the perspective of Albert, actually, because these two were doing battle for what is P3 in their class. Albert having to just take it nice and easy, while these two looking to go around the outside was that Hyundai. And so minimal room there for the Porsche to get through, but he makes it work, and he's unlocked the door for himself to keep pushing on in the final stage of this race. Wouldn't have really mattered too much if he didn't get that one done, but it is Scott Malcolm and Jaden Scotton doing battle here around the outside. Looks Scott Malcolm in that Lumen Motorsports blackout machine, and this will be for some pretty good points. All the while, it's Alok Iyengar, who we said earlier on has hung on for the time being in what will be his best finish of the season, and he is well clear of these drivers. 12 seconds up the road as comes through another GT4 driver. I think that's Thomas Pugh mixing it in with these two now. Yesterday is the Access Sim Sports driver. Off the road goes the Honda Advantage Scotland in what will be probably the last lap of the race for these. No, it's not. It's the second last lap.
I think we're going to get one more.
These guys. Yeah, Humphrey just heading up turn 2 now, so we will... Will we get one
I'm
more?
talking about a second, though. No, genuinely, I looked at it. When his time came up for his last lap, it said that his last lap was a 2:12, and there was 2:12 left on the clock. But that lap time often comes up a second or two after they've crossed the line. So I think he will cross the line with about 2 seconds to go, unless he slows down. And he's got 19.5 seconds in hand, and very much could slow down if he wants to. It's just whether or not he actually wants to do an extra lap or not. He's got to be careful on the fuel mileage as well. I think it'd be smart to just shorten this race by a lap, unless he's got more than enough fuel. Yeah, you're right, trying to get himself ahead of the 252. Well, actually, no, he is the 252, having to fight around at the moment with Robin Earl Brown, who's in this battle, just in behind Rob Gregg, the driver in front.
Here we go then. It's now or never. The white flag wasn't out there, Dara, as Martin Kenyon crossed the line, so we will have an extra lap for everybody, as Humphrey is just second, final third of the lap at the moment, so we're right on board as he looks to take that white flag. But at the moment, it's these two doing battle for the closest that we have on track. Look at that. The top division, 20 seconds between the leaders, 30 seconds in the Pro TCR category, 40 seconds in the AM TCR category, but these two half a second away from each other as they head through Forest Elbow. Nils Culler will need to try and get a run because really he's only got 2 or 3 opportunities to try and get this move done. All the while, Liam Fraser ahead, having to do battle with some of the not only TCR drivers but also some of the GT4 blue flag drivers, which is about as bad as it could get when you're trying to defend the race lead in such a tight championship battle, coming right to the wire here before we get to the final round next week.
Yeah, we are now on to the final lap with William Humphrey. These guys are just about to start their final lap, and Niels Kula will have another couple of opportunities to get through, and Liam Fraser will be happy that we're going that extra lap, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to win this race. Is he going to make a move into the final turn? No. He's got about 2.25 minutes to try and find a way through turn 2, and then really down at the chase there is only major overtaking opportunities, maybe into the final corner if he's able to get the car slowed down and get it into a good position, because there's no way that you can get an up and under through that final corner with the lack of space between that and the line. So let's see if he can do it. Opportunities running very much thin, but he's going to believe in himself, I'm sure, to try and get this win.
Yeah, and of course the difference between these positions, 10 points in these sessions, so it is a real haul, bearing in mind they came into it tonight only 6 points away from each other. There's been that first race which will have divided things, but 10 points with only a 6-point difference, with Robin Noah Brown not having the best night. One of these guys is likely to lead the championship, and it's going to come down to these next 20 corners or so. Up the hill once again, closing in is the Porsche, and really he's going to have to get a good run through the dipper, try and get him on the exit and lead him into chase. He needs to be on the inside line going through chase, which will be the inside line at the final corner. Will be tricky for him to hold that line, but that's his best chance. Oh no, he's gone off the track. That's going to invite him, but he's not going to be able to get in front before the dipper. That's going to put some pressure though on Liam Fraser, who might just be a little bit worried now in the cockpit, having made that mistake. Nils will be hungry for this one. He'll be all over it.
Yeah, nervy moments right at the end of this race, but as they battle, is it going to be a send at the elbow? Oh, that's not where you make a send at all, particularly on the final lap, but he's just about going to get, well, nearly an overlap on the exit. Not quite enough, but they're going to run down towards the chase. Meanwhile, William Humphrey's about to cross the line, I think.
He is, and we'll cut to that later, because I do not want to miss a race overtake potentially for what is going to be a championship position, really. Humphrey has won out, and he will win the championship, I'm sure. We'll speak to him, and that's getting pretty feisty. Between one of the blue flags, there's going to be contact there. Holy moly, Liam Fraser is doing absolutely everything here, breaking the rules somewhat to try and stay ahead of Nils Culler. He's aggressively defended that inside line. Is Culler going to look for the switchback? Is he going to try and hang it around the outside? Fraser hasn't given himself the best run. He'll be thankful for a short run to the line. Look at that, across the line. Nothing separating the two of them, a tenth of a second. The difference between 10 points, which is as good as it gets when you're fighting for a championship. What a battle that was in the end. A little bit touchy at times there for Fraser, but he has managed to defend that Porsche and will take those additional 10 points, Dara. And wow, it's going to be close between those two next week.
Yeah, crazy way to end the race. I mean, we're going to get Andrew McKinley. He's still racing. Mind you, it was a 47-minute race over that for William Humphrey. It's going to be pretty much 49 for Andrew McKinley. He's going to win out here. Fantastic for the Scotsman. I think with Logan McKenzie, well, maybe out of the race entirely, it wouldn't make a difference. He would need to gain 51 points in this race, and with a P9 finish, even if he picks up those points, McKinsey is going to be over 100 points back going into next week. Although having said that, of course, he's going to pick up 100 points from drop round. So actually, I think officially, he's still going to be in it, I think.
Well, that does bode well for, of course, our entertainment next week.
Yes, he's still in it.
Okay, do you want to, what is the maths there? Do you have it?
Yeah, so Logan McKenzie will have to take his drop round here, regardless of whether he picks up the points or not. But it will mean that with the win for Andrew McKinley, McKinley's going to have a 94-point lead going into next week, which really only means he has to finish one of the races. But it means still officially it's alive.
Well, there we go. That bodes well. Well, he's about to take the checkered flag, and he will win out once again. It's been a great second half of the season, as we said, but this one goes in the favour of McKinley. McKenzie down there in 9th, out of the race on that final lap. Alok Iyengar and Jaden Scotton doing well to get on the podium. Great work by Alok there, his best result of the season. It was a bit frantic there. Didn't really follow many drivers over the line, of course. Some guys finishing early due to the blue flag. But yeah, Hales, Weir and Kenyon, the 3 podium sitters in the TCR AM class. We're going to run through the order, Dara, and we're going to have to speak to some of these drivers because that was frantic.
Yeah, 45 minutes of really intense action. And towards the end of the season, these points are going to be critical for everybody involved. Not least for some of the, podium positions in the championship, meaning there's some trophies in this in the GT4 Pro class.
Here we go then. I think we're still waiting for these results to come in. But yeah, really, really entertaining session. And I'm sure for a lot of those drivers, that will be one of the most stressful league races that they've had in a while. We haven't arrived to Bathurst in quite a few seasons. I think the last, from my memory, was season 3 in the GT3. So it may have been there once in that time. But yeah, definitely not a track that we have on the calendar every single year. So a stressful one for sure for a lot of those drivers, especially for Fraser and Culler across the line in that GT4 AM class. So let's run you through the order then. It was William Humphrey who once again wins out at the front of the field and converts his second consecutive championship in a GT4 machine. Did it last season in the Mercedes, does it this season in the Porsche. Made the convert, and it's worked for him again in what was one hell of a dominant championship. He finished 18, nearly 19 seconds ahead of his teammate Yannis Olber, which is good points in their bid to try and bring home that team's championship. Thomas Pugh next on the podium ahead of Ben Smith and Stephen Donnelly. It's Jeremy Ulemans and Mitchell Costas next up, rounding out the top 8 with Lawrence Den Ouden. Adam Atherton will be the last to take home any points here, with Sparrow, Hibmer and Hibbert not bringing home points, not finishing the race, and not a good start at all for Jeff Hibbert, who was out on the opening lap.
Yeah, not what they needed whatsoever, but I'm sure they'll be back with vengeance next week. In the AM class, it was Liam Fraser who won by the barest of margins. In the end, it was 44 thousandths of a second. Wasn't quite the 1/10 that we saw. I don't think we've seen a closer finish so far this season. Incredible here at Bathurst. It was Edward Grobe third, Greg and Bailey 4th and 5th, and they were the only drivers within a minute of the race winner. Sheesby, Stottard, Welland, Poole and Stace were all on the lead lap. Robin L. Brown was a lap down, but still pick up the points for P11. Sadly for John Lubrook, a long way down, will not be scoring any points.
Now let's take a look over at the TCR division. Andrew McKinley will be pleased with the result of his teammate, and there, look at that for Team Shelter, not the results that we've been used to seeing from those guys. Congratulations to Alok Iyengar, gets his best result of the season. I'm sure he'll be dead chuffed with that finish. Jaden Scotton getting on the podium, keeping his top 3 hopes alive in that division, ahead of Scott Malcolm and Jay Corley, the lead team shelter driver. It'll be Max Devanchani and James Howarth next up. Anthony Hilton may score points if he crossed the line, but for Logan McKenzie and Kevin Marshall, I don't think that will be enough for either of those to bring home any points, which is critical, as you said, Dara. The drop round applied. Yeah, so not the best for Hilton and McKenzie there.
Yeah, and then finally over in the GT4 TCR AM class, it'll be Gordon Hales, the South African P2 in race 1, P1 in race 2. He was ahead of Danny Weir and Martin Kenyon. Great night for Danny Weir, actually, a first and a second. Really impressive for him. Steve Rubino and Hussein Samakadesta are on the lead lap. They'll pick up points for 4th and 5th. I don't think anybody else is going to score any points at all. Fellows, Parker, Sergeant Haddington, 4, 5, 7 and 17 lap down respectively. And I think that might be too far for the points classification.
I think you might be right. So then, let's go and speak to a few of our drivers. Let's see who's in the booth. I hope we can speak to William Humphrey. Yes, we can. He is in there. Quite a few of these guys waiting. So let me prepare the necessary, as always, and then we'll speak to a handful of our drivers before we close out ahead of that final championship round this time next week.
Yeah, I think it's important we are able to speak to a couple of drivers, not least very possibly our champion. And are we ready to bring him in, Joe?
We are, mate. Let's go.
We are. Right, then. Let's bring in William Humphrey, then. He's got 1,060 points, including... Well, not even including the 68 points that he's dropped. He is going to be the champion this season. William, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Welcome back, Will. Well, it's been a few weeks since we spoke, and let me just start by saying a big congratulations. I mean, it's been coming. Part of me is surprised that you haven't done it sooner, quite frankly, but you've done it with 1 week in advance. Lots of practice around this circuit over the last couple of weeks. It's paid off for you there with 2 dominant performances. Round out the race and, of course, round out that season, mate. That's consecutive championships for you now in the Drivers' Championships.
Yeah, I'm really happy with this. More happy than I was last season. I think even more happy that I can relax a bit now. not put so much time into a GT4 car. But yeah, I'm just really happy with this and happy to do the back-to-back and ready for the next challenge.
Talk us through that one, Will. Compared to the GT3, of course, we did lots of running on Saturday. Was it all that different, or could you carry some characteristics over from both of those machines?
Wow. The way the GT4s work and how bouncy they are, it proves to be a very difficult car to drive around this track, especially going into Skyline and the Dipper. It just bounces everywhere you go. There are some similarities with how you take some corners and how you can take some curbs, but it is like driving, weirdly enough, another car. You can't treat it as a GT3, you have to treat it as a GT4 and treat it like a baby brother that you have to then help your way through the corner rather than force it through.
And Will, I mean, this season you've been so dominant. How have you been able to keep that consistency so high, even with the reverse grids that we've seen, even with, a couple of little bumps and bruises that you've received in some races? What's been the key to keeping it up for you? Just winning. I mean, you've won 18 races now.
I think it's the team around me. I've got an amazing team, an amazing spotter, and made some nice friends along the way. And I think that each and every one of them are very supportive in both endurance races and ESR, and it just makes me want to go faster, to be honest, to work harder and do it for them.
Awesome to hear, mate. That's very, very good. And now I guess that one's said and done. I'm not sure what the maths is, but some pretty strong results for you and Yanis. That could change things in the team's championship. So I guess for you now, it's all eyes on that, of course. To do well in that, you'll need to do well next week around Brands Hatch. Another pretty tricky circuit. Shares some characteristics of this one, of course. Not much room for error. Is that a circuit that you fancy, or is that one that well, you'll have to wait and see?
Oh well, I haven't really driven Brands Hatch that much in any game, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it will drive. I think it'll help me out a bit because I have nothing to relate it to, which means I can kind of go in blind with the GT4. But me and Yanis are definitely going to work hard on that, and definitely going to try our best to get that P1 in the team's championship.
Good stuff, mate. Well, thank you for joining us, of course. And all I can say is big congratulations and good luck well, for whatever you're doing next, and for next week, of course, in your hunt for that title. And yeah, enjoy your night, enjoy the week, because it's finally over. You've done it, and yeah, you can be certainly proud of the consistent results that you've put on show for us this season.
Thank you so much.
Then William Humphrey joining us this evening. Great to speak to him, Joe, after such a good result for him in the championship. I think I can see another race winner into the form of Liam Fraser in the booth that we can drag in. I think he's going to be the championship leader in the GT4 AM, so it would be good to speak to him. There we go. Liam Fraser then joining us now. Can you hear us, Liam?
Good evening.
Good stuff, Liam. Welcome back, and congratulations on that race win. Now, we haven't done the full maths, I don't think, but it definitely bodes well for you leading that championship right toward the end of it. That's exactly kind of how you want it to be. Pressure on Noel Brown at the start. In the end, you've come out on top. Just talk us through that final lap, the final couple of laps. You had Noel's colour all over the back of you. It got a little bit touchy at the end there with some of the blue flags and some of the other machines getting in the way a little bit, but you managed to hold him off. But that must have been a pretty stressful closing few laps there, knowing what was on the cards.
Yeah, closing time was getting a bit tight. Catching TCRs at the wrong point, to be honest. You can do the wrong thing and send it in the wrong place and then ruin all the race. So just trying to be patient. The Porsche got out of the BMW hairpin really, really well, but I caught him towards the end and I was braking really well into the chicane. So coming up to that last lap, Ben Smith in front. He's playing silly buggers, if I'm honest. He's pushing a TCR, and by the time we caught him at the wrong point, made a decision that all balls to the wall and was going. And we went. Luckily, it just about come off, and into the last corner. It didn't quite get what I want. I wanted to really park it on the apex, but I braked too late. And if it was the start line, I'd have come second there. Neil Sculler was absolutely fault. He was brilliant today. First race with Noel Brown was amazing. I'd done plenty of practice for this race, I'll be honest. Knowing full well the championship is definitely looking nice. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. I was a bit warm after the end of the last race. I was a bit hot under the collar, I'll be honest.
Going into next week, of course, Liam, championship leader, you'll have a 6-point advantage. It's slim. But a quick word on Brands Hatch. What's the confidence like at that circuit?
No, I'm scared to death of Brands Hatch, to be honest. Drop a wheel, you're dead. Back to us 2:30 minutes, which I'm quite happy about. But yeah, luckily I've got a couple of days off coming up, and I will be lapping Brands Hatch like I've never lapped a circuit before.
Good stuff, Liam. Well, that's exactly what you need to do, and it's the time to do it, right? If you can try and get the best result you can, that could really end your season on a major high. So thanks for joining us, congratulations, and as always, I'll give you a chance for a shout out if you would like to.
Thank you very much. Shout out to the Moonshiner boys who had a bit of fun tonight. However you saw it on stream, I don't know, but well done to the boys. Pete from work, Pete's been watching tonight. Hello, mate. We've got Tony from work. Tony's been watching. Dan, I'm going to make sure you get a shout out, buddy. And to Robin Noel Brown's family, because I know they watch, and anybody who watches sim racing is a friend of mine.
That's very good. Awesome stuff, Liam. Well, thanks for that. And yeah, maybe, I don't want to put the pressure on, but maybe we'll speak to you again next week when things have gone your way. Let's see. Still all to play for, but best of luck with practice this week, and let's see where we are in a week's time.
Thank you, gents.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Liam. Liam Fraser there joining us, of course, leading the championship in the GT4 AMS, leading the championship in the TCR Pros. He is so close to a title now. It is going to be Andrew McKinley, the Scotsman. He joins us now. Andrew, you've got one hand on the title. Welcome in. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, as Dara was saying, I'll follow up. Andrew, you've been but you have led the way for some time, of course, and you didn't have that drop round having missed the first round, and maybe that's been something that's played on your mind for a little while. But as Dara rightly says, I think you've got one hand on it now. Not the best result in the second race there for Logan, I think down in P9 in the end. So you did what you had to do. You withstood the early pressure, you two going toe-to-toe in that first race. Talk us through that. How does it feel? And I mean, I can't imagine the TCR is the best thing to drive around here, but it's nearly said and done for you.
Well, the TCRs are definitely a car I absolutely love driving, and especially around this track. It can be challenging and stuff, but if you've got the rhythm, you've got it.
But for you, I mean, you've won a great championship all the way from the start of the season. You know, you've won countless races, 9 it is now, and podiums galore as well, 17 of those. You've been so consistent. Of course, you weren't with us in the opening round at Zolder, and it's meant that every single point that you've won has had to be earned. You've not been able to fall back on anything. How difficult has it been to keep yourself in a battle with Logan, because it's been a titanic battle between the two of you?
It's been quite a challenge, because I knew from the get-go, I knew Logan was definitely a competitor, especially even though his I rating is like high. I just had to think in my head, right, he is definitely a fast driver, and he's been on that from the get-go. So it's quite a challenge for that, and I quite like it.
And Brands Hatch next week, is that obviously quite similar to this? I'm sure that will be really good for these TCR machines, so I'm sure if you like the challenge around here, I'm sure you'll be looking forward to that one.
Oh yeah, Brands Hatch is always a great finale to round off the league. It's like the British Touring cars, basically.
Exactly.
Last round at the Brands Hatch track, and yeah, I'm so looking forward to that.
Very good, mate. Well, thanks for joining us, and yeah, good luck with your preparation for that. Maybe when we speak to you next week, you'll have more than just one hand on that title. So if you'd like to give anybody a shout out while you're still here, you can go ahead and do that now, and then we'll wrap things up.
Massive shout out to Lumen Motorsport. They have done an exceptional job all through this league, and well done to all my drivers tonight, and it was such a great result for all the team.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you so much, and yeah, good luck with your preparation, and we'll see how we get on around Brands Hatch.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Good stuff, mate.
McKinley there, nearly champion in the TCR Pro class. He may have to wait 7 days to get there, but great to speak to 3 drivers who are on the verge of, getting themselves some, I was going to say some silverware, some little bit of metal trophy, Joe.
Yeah, well, it's the metal trophy, but it's also, the sort of relief of 10 weeks worth of racing. Of course, the build-up during pre-season, not necessarily knowing where you're going to end up, not knowing who your competition's going to be, and then it starts to break away. Of course, Humphrey's been a clear favourite right since the start of the championship, but for those guys in the AM class, in the GT4s, and of course the Pro class in the TCRs, it hasn't been so easy, but it's good to hear from the 3 of them, because come this time next week, it'll be heartbreak for some, but overwhelming sort of happiness, I would imagine, and relief for the others. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. Of course, we have the season finale upcoming in our GT3 championship on Thursday, same time, getting underway at about 8 o'clock for the qualifying session, which will be about 10 past 8, so be sure to be with us for that one. It promises to be a hell of a championship. We've got a close battle. The championship's said and done in the Premier class, but it's still up for grabs in the Evo class, and there's quite a few drivers who have an opportunity to steal that one. Following that, of course, we'll have the finale of this championship, where, as we've just said, it's all to play for inside at least 2, if not 3, of those 5 championships that we have left. It will be so crucial to see how the team's points stack up after that one, because it wasn't clear-cut between Team Shelter, Kame, and the Glasstec DXT team, so it really could change up the order in the run-in to the final week. So thanks for everyone for watching, as always. Thanks to everyone who took part in the chat, and to those drivers at the end for giving us some of their time to come and speak to us. And yeah, we'll catch you in a couple of days, and until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be with you just before we get to Friday, which is always a nice time. Thursday night broadcast ahead of Friday, just before the weekend. Can't really be much better than that. So thanks all, and we'll catch you in a few days.